Good afternoon and welcome back everyone to the final session of ASA International Forum 2024. How time flies, we are now in the third session of the forum already, and I believe we all here cannot wait to learn and hear from our two speakers. The following section we have Daliana Suryawinata and Florian Heinzelmann, co-founders of SHAU from Indonesia. They will give us a talk on socio-climatic spaces, which revolve around a reciprocal relationship between human activities that influence the climate, and conversely, how the climate of a particular area impacts potential human interactions. It's time. Please join me to welcome our speakers, Daliana and Florian.
Can we start? Hello, everyone. Thanks for having us. It's a great honor to be here. And yeah, I think you will start, right, with the presentation.
So first of all, thank you so much for bringing us here. All the ASA organization, you've done a wonderful job. This event is really international and really we're learning a lot also today. So here we are. We have the afternoon session, so we have the privilege of using chairs and being more relaxed, so thank you for that. We're lucky. So we're going to talk about socio-climatic spaces, but hopefully also to respond on your theme on the critical regionalism, where we will focus on our projects, which are more of the typology of the house on stilts, but more on that later. So a quick background of where we've been, but also the multiple identities that we both have. So Florian is a true Bavarian from Germany, Munich, and he was working for in Berlin and in Munich, but also in Japan. While I'm a Jakarta born and bred Indonesian, I went to the local university there. And then later in the Netherlands, we both met and fell in love. And later decided to open an office together. And we work at several offices in the Netherlands, did our shopping together and did some research at TU Delft. And now Florian is associate professor at NUS. And since 2009 in Rotterdam, actually, the Netherlands, we started SHAU. So we are a Dutch company in the beginning, and then we later moved to Indonesia.
So, yeah, I mean, you see what Daliana explained. Our journey is sort of a journey of learning from different cultural backgrounds and also unlearning and relearning. And so we made this personal Dymaxion world map, based on what Buckminster Fuller proposed. And the nice idea about it is that you can cut it in pieces and reassemble it and produce your own or new or unforeseen context. So, and it is in a way, of course, a critique towards the Mercator map, which is European-centric. And being here in Thailand and operating in, Thailand, luckily, maybe never has been colonized as far as I know, but a lot in Southeast Asia and in this context we're talking about is colonialism as a heritage and also post-colonialism, which plays a big role in this discussion of critical regionalism as well. So by using this map, we also reject a little bit this idea of the Eurocentrism. And we unfolded it in such a way that you see Southeast Asia as the centerpiece. And we also could unfold it in such a way that you see more or less a continuous line around the equator. Because what is also interesting in our tropical region and climate is that we can also learn along the globe from different countries, as long as they're, let's say, within more or less the Tropic of Cancer or the Tropic of Capricorn. Yeah.
So Indonesian traditional architecture, there is a lot to learn from. It's a thick roof on stilts, all of them. And each island has each different specific architecture that responds to the same tropicality, but also is a container of the social activities.
So the house on stilts, as earlier mentioned by Daliana, is also a vernacular typology, but a climatic device. And it is built around a specific tropical rainforest climate, high moisture, humidity. And basically it's a device which enables cross ventilation in order to keep moisture out, but also cool the building. And this house on stilts, in a way, as the thick programmatic roof, if you want to say this, has the space for living, but also flexible space underneath. And you will see this coming back in parts of or in our designs and the topic for today.
So being in the tropical rainforest climate, there is a certain level of comfort zone, let's say, which is defined by temperature, humidity, airflow, what you're wearing. And this can be extended through shading and natural ventilation up to a certain degree. So when it gets too hot and humid, it doesn't work anymore. You still need air conditioning and dehumidification. But it's interesting to see where we are in the world and how the sun orientation should shape our buildings, because it really helps with the energy consumption and the orientation towards north-south. To have the small surface on the east-west really is really useful and important.
So, this passive climatic design strategies, which we are also showing in this vernacular typology as something to learn, is insofar significant because if you look at these graphs, for instance, India and Indonesia, they're currently very low in energy consumption per capita in terms of air conditioning. But that will drastically change with the rise of the middle class and the growing economy. And at a certain moment, there will be more and more energy consumption. And the problem is, of course, global warming is a fact. And we need to, or can do something with architecture in order to try to lower it. Because otherwise we will have sort of a continuous loop of it gets hotter, we need to use more aircon, we need to use more energy, and so on and so forth. And the built environment with operational energy needs to counter that in a way, and we can do our part in a tropical region.
So the architecture of Indonesian vernacular architecture is not only the space, but also the people. So here is a relationship of the Minang family and the roof next to it, the shelter. And there is a professor in Indonesia, Gunawan Cahyono. He actually kind of defined the Indonesian architecture as having a head, body, and feet. And it's still an ongoing search for definition and redefinition. And it is an interesting discussion that we also like to engage ourselves with.
So rounding up about vernacular architecture, what we find interesting is that, let's say, each climate has a certain material provided, which in our case is timber, bamboo, light materials, and around this material and construction develop certain techniques. But in a way it is not quite clear what is influencing what, at least to us, because around this built environment there is a certain culture, society and religion emerging, and that again influences the built environment and the form of the building and the expression thereof. Of course, what has changed is if we talk about vernacular architecture, and that makes it also a little bit critical to see this as a sort of driver only for architecture, contemporary architecture, is that our material reality changed completely. We have industrialization, all sorts of new materials come in, all sorts of new techniques. So we cannot rely only on that, and we need to broaden this. And I think it was earlier also mentioned by Mariana that the problem is with the material is that, for instance, timber, bamboo is seen as a poor man's material, right? And we have it in kampungs, small villages, poor villages in Indonesia, where, for instance, the modern material is seen as something higher value, where you have then brick construction, concrete, and corrugated roofs. And this is also a problem which we are facing in, say, let's say, poorer settlements around the whole global south, that actually these materials, which are sold on a larger scale by powerful industries, in a way also contribute in the end, again, with towards a worse CO2 footprint. So in that sense, vernacular architecture cannot be the only driver. Now, the topic critical regionalism, a simulacra as a question, and of course with the architectural discourse in Indonesia, also steered by Gunawan Chayono, you know, where do we stand nowadays? How can we see this? So on the left side, we have the Soekarno-Hatta International Airport Terminal 1 and 2 from the 80s till 90s by Paul Andreu, which also, by the way, won an Aga Khan Award, but for the landscaping, and it was, you know, designed as a airport in the garden, or garden airport. And what you see here is a Joglo Pendopo. Joglo is actually a roof form in Java, which is used for palaces and gathering spaces, right? So is this the right device for an airport, where you take it a little bit out of the context, out of its societal role within Indonesia, and make an airport building out of it? At the same time, the whole structure is made of steel instead of timber, and it's painted a sort of red-brownish. That on one side, and then on the other side we have the current Terminal 3, which is designed by Woodhead, and apart from some functional deficits and very long miles to walk till you get into your plane or getting your luggage, it is of course very bland in a way that it almost reminds of Jacques Tati's Playtime, where you see like the advertisement of these different towers advertising different cities. So it's completely devoid of any locality. So the only way to know that you are in Indonesia is by seeing people inside wearing colorful batik shirts, and that's the way how you recognize that you're in Indonesia, not by the building itself. So probably the answer is with projects like this by Andra Matin, I think one of the most famous Indonesian architects who won a Aga Khan Award again for the Banyuwangi airport in East Java. And you see here there is this notion of the roof, there's the notion of the house on stilts, there's this notion of a climatic response in form of green roofs and openness and sort of this horizontality. So, but that also is very nice or very optimistic for us or all the architects, that we can make from this critical regionalism, if we are sensitive, we can make what we want from it, and we are also able to interpret and not only follow a certain you know, vernacular doctrine in a way.
So this is what SHAU says, or what we both say, is that we're trying to do all our projects socio-climatic, and this means simply is that where it is comfortable, people gather. So this is as simple as that. When there is no comfort, people don't want to be there, and then the architecture is not really successful. So we sum up some determining factors, and there is on the left side the user-oriented factors, on the right side the climate-responsive factors. They're both important, and when the climate-responsive, we're talking about the comfort level, the design orientation, natural light and air, energy saving, low-carbon material, and landscape integration. The user-oriented, the social side is less forgiving in a way that if it's not culturally embedded, there is a good stakeholder collaboration, inclusivity for all, neighborhood perception, local craftsmanship, and placemaking possibility, the building can get canceled or burned or both. So in a way, if one fails on the climate responsive segment, you can buy an air conditioning to help the building and it's still running, but socially it has to work as well. So we find this both really important and apply it on a wide range of scales and typologies of SHAU projects, which we have in Nusantara, in Jakarta, Bandung. And today we would like to kind of make a selection for the audience of ASA that part of our work, which are houses on stilts, as a socio-climatic device, and we'll start with several micro-libraries and Tasik Creative Center, continuing up to the Presidential Palace in the new capital. So I'd like to start with the micro-library Bima. This is the first micro-library in Bandung, West Java, Indonesia, where it's an elevated volume on stilts. It has a stage and it has 2,000 ice cream buckets. So we collected 2,000 of the used plastic buckets, which people are throwing after the wedding. So there are a lot of weddings, like in Thailand, also in Indonesia, where people eat ice cream. So we did not manage to finish all the ice cream by ourselves, but actually these are other people's waste material, which is collected online for around 2 weeks. Then you get like 2,000 of them. The context is super important for us because this is, I think, where we fail or be more successful in some of the projects with the people around. So the neighborhood is an intersection between middle-class housing and kind of low-end housing, kampung by the river side. So it has an existing stage, which we do not want to take away, but improve and add a volume on top. And this is the neighborhood by the river where most users are from here. So the children, the youth, they live here and they are lacking facility. So not only they're lacking a library, they're also lacking clinic, etc. So sometimes they multi-purposely use the library for different activities. So by adding a protected a volume up there, the stage is shaded and rain protected, and the selection of the ice cream buckets make it possible for cross ventilation. So some of the buckets are pierced, and definitely daylighting as well. And this is the message from the mayor of Bandung, where it means like books are the windows to the world. So each facade is coded in a binary code, so and you can read through that there is a message, and 1 and 0 means like 1 is when you don't pierce the bucket, so it stays as a hole, and 0 is where you have opening and hole for the cross ventilation. So this is the interior of the micro library, and we added a polycarbonate sliding door because in the kind of crazy rain that happens here and there, it is not enough to just have one layer of skin. We need to close it all, but it can be mostly open during the day and when it's not raining. So at night, it lights up, and this photo shows a youth community talking about their project together. So it's used as a library, but also sometimes as a bi-weekly clinic and many other activities. So reading activities and arts and crafts and many things.
So based on the success of the microlibrary Bima, we were commissioned with the microlibrary Varakayo. And this was insofar interesting because we could here realize the first FSC certified or completely certified building in Indonesia, and the company hiring us via foundation, via the Akatama Iswara Foundation, is actually the timber supplier. And in the beginning we had a lot of discussion what material or what of their timber products we will or could use And it was very clear for us early on to have this ambition to have as much timber material as possible, because the discussion was, will we have a concrete structure and use the material only for facade or, let's say, interior claddings. The location here is a little bit different than in nature than that in Bandung. Bandung was only for this neighborhood. Here we have a bit of a bigger audience. So you see it is also along a river. The river was a little bit of dirty and got cleaned up in this sort of wake of how everything was built. It had a defunctioned food court, which is now working next to it. So it works much more synergetically as a sort of larger public space configuration. And also interestingly, there's a bus line which is bringing local domestic tourists along. So it has a bigger reach, and also could potentially become an icon for the city of Semarang rather than only the neighborhood. Nonetheless, the neighborhood looking up the river is pretty nice. So you have Kampung Pelangi, which is the rainbow kampung. And you have a sort of tree nursery and plants sold on the other side. So in order to make it happen, we visited the factory because we needed to see what they are capable of in terms of manufacturing and in terms of products and materials available. And with that, we started a sort of a bottom-up design process. Meaning, yeah, what do they have, what can we do? And this is mostly plywood products, as well as finger joint laminates as a more structural element for beams and columns. And based on that, we started our design. And now it comes back a little bit to this vernacular. Yes, it is a house on stilts, which in a way relates. Yes, it has this cross ventilation. Yes, it has these overhangs. But the entire constructive system is a contemporary one. So instead of having traditional timber joints, we work with lap joints and industrial manufacturing. So this is not, and does also not want to be a timber frame construction, but this is a post and beam construction, which is very contemporary. And what we see here is a screen as a brise soleil. We use a Tollinger construction, which is actually something coming from where I'm from Germany. It was developed in the 1920s, and is a sort of reciprocal system where one board holds another board by piercing through with long bolts. And we found this actually quite appropriate because this in itself has a very strong expression, which you will see later in the details. But not an expression for this traditional craftsmanship, but for contemporary construction. And during the design process, also this diamond-shaped pattern reminded us to a scale pattern, which we then, as part of the narrative and part of the storytelling, associated with the Waragnendok, which is the icon of Semarang. So this little dragon, goat-like creature is also insofar interesting because it's an amalgamation of several cultural aspects within Semarang and in different ethnic groups. So again, Semarang being a harbor city with trade, with a Chinese influence, with a influence from Islam and all sorts of people, you know, there is not this sort of one pure thing in a way, right? So it is always influenced by change in cultural exchange, and I think there's also the interesting part of a library, you know, opening your minds and the windows to the world. So here the section with the whole construction, and also part of this building was not only learning as a library, as a learning facility for the kids and for the neighborhood, but the factory itself, the people can try out new techniques, new manufacturing techniques. But the mock-up here, which you see, was also built to train the contractor because they have never done this before. So it was necessary to build a one-to-one mock-up for make everybody understanding how this is assembled together. Then part of the educational, what you see here is this is actually wrapped around one of the columns so that people who are interested not only in the books but also in construction can have a look and can start understanding how this building is made and layered. And now here a couple of photos of the existing or of the building, how it is done. So you see the semi-outdoor space underneath, and what we also want to do often in many of our projects is including these play spaces, because with that we can have or lure almost children towards this facility, and hopefully they will grab a book and start reading as well with this net up there, because it's sort of reading is not that prominent currently in Indonesia. So in a way, kids start to associate libraries with something positive, with some playfulness. Entering the library, so you see integration of shoe storage that you can enter, but it can be also used as a small amphitheater for screening movies. And then the upper space, gently daylit via sort of reflection from the timber material into interior in form of diffuse light, and ample cross ventilation. So these micro libraries don't have any air conditionings, and apart from lighting, artificial lighting in the night, there is not much installed in it. And here you see the cleaned up river side after a while, and the functioning cafe on the or warung on the right side. And yeah, it was a quite prominent building, or still quite prominent building, and we can monitor that very interestingly via social media, because if you probably same like here in Thailand, Indonesians are very fond of Facebook and Instagram, so you can always find some updates how your building is doing and how it is performing in an actual use.
The next project is in Yogyakarta, so maybe some people have been there for holiday. That's Central Java, very nice city. So sometimes we get a commission from the Ministry of Public Works of Indonesia for a master plan project, for Kampung Improvement Program, and we get to select which sites we work on in a bigger kind of framework. So on the north side of this kampung area are two major universities in Yogyakarta. So there are a lot of people in this kampung. They rent out their spaces for the students to stay. But there is no kind of like feedback from the university side in a way that this kampung becomes more knowledge-oriented, or there is an education facility coming in. So we think when we're intervening here, it would be nice that whatever park we do, it's educational park, or whatever intervention we do, it also kind of adds the kind of learning possibility for the residents and playing possibility. So there are a lot of kids, every time they see an empty spot in the kampung, they make it their play space, because they're very creative users. So a lot of these interventions we do, we try to put in the playground, play space. There is a flood control post as well here. The urban farming of the community needs upgrading, so we thought we also take part in it. Also, the kind of just a simple solution on the drainage and street. The lighting is important because it's really dark at night. And we also have to design the lamp so it doesn't look like a kitsch lamp from the famous street on the city, which they always want to bring back. It's kind of colonial style. So we try to keep it clean by designing ourselves too. Fine, sure. And here is a Javanese text in a local Javanese alphabet that means beauty and sustainability. It's on the floor. So all of this is in collaboration and in participation with the residents, the neighborhood, and of course, we see it as a possibility to insert a micro-library into this master plan intervention program. So a tip to those who are doing serial architecture, you can connect it to different projects where you're assigned not specifically your serial project, but you can always find it and insert it in. So here is a gathering space that they already have, an urban farming site, and the micro-library as a new addition on top of a multifunctional plaza. So every time we see a multifunctional plaza, we don't take it away because they really use it for wedding, just for parking sometimes, but it's really there for a purpose. So we elevate so that we can sandwich these programs of the library and another program. And in this case, we know that Yogyakarta has a lot of local craftsmanship and custom bricks. So there are at least 5 different places around the neighborhood that can produce these terracotta bricks. So we experiment with that and come up with the pattern at the office. But this needs to be built by a public contractor, which has the reputation of not being detail-oriented, right? It's different when you run a private project or a government project, right? Probably it's the same here. But in this case, we work with them and we bring a sample to our office, work it out, the detail, and communicate it back with the contractor team over there. And so this is, I think, the photo a few months ago where they're putting up the facade together. So it's kind of working as a secondary skin. We always use another layer for the rain as we did in the previous micro-libraries as well. And it is not finished. We are inviting a landscape architect to collaborate with us because we have this planter and there will be some productive landscape over there as well as the greening of the whole village. So this is how it is right now. It's, the public perception is really good in the neighborhood. They like it. So it becomes their new identity. And this afternoon, Florian just showed me in an Instagram post that they have a new name for this micro-library, which we were not told. So since, well, it's really good that there is such enthusiasm from the neighborhood side.
So, yeah, the micro-libraries on stilts, in this case Bima and Varakayu, sort of a in-between conclusion. Yeah, we see these elevated spaces really also as spaces for a certain potential, for certain activities. The unforeseen activities can happen underneath. In the traditional vernacular, it is, you know, keeping the kettle or having a workshop. But in our micro-libraries, we have the sort of protected book container up there, but then lifting it up, instead of putting it on the ground, we don't take other functions away. In the case of Bima, there was a football field and a stage. If we would have placed it on the ground, that would have gone, and the whole reason why people come there in the first place would have disappeared. Then at the same time, yeah, they provide shelter and shade and, yeah, allow informal activities to happen. And we try also to scale this up to a certain degree. And with that is the Tasikmalaya Creative Center, which we were commissioned by yeah, the province of West Java with Ridwan Kamil as the governor back then. And so you see, this is the project as it is built. And it was quite challenging in the beginning. And the reason also is why it is actually a house of stilts is Indonesia has a, well, let's say, problem, of course, with public transportation. So there's a lot of individual transportation, there's a lot of car, and there's a lot of motorcycles. And that's how people are going or getting around. So you need to have a lot of dedicated space for parking lots. And the city wanted to keep their parking lots. So we didn't have any other chance than elevating the building above the parking lot to accommodate this parking. Oops. That was the wrong button. So looking here at the AXO, so you see we basically really placed this building above the parking lot to keep as much as possible. But nonetheless, we also demanded and have our own agenda to, you know, integrate a bit of more green and take make not everything parking. This is what you see in the front. And with the exploded AXO, you see in the middle we have these 2 stairs. And this is also something interesting because usually if you have public buildings or public parks in Indonesia, they get often during the evenings they get locked off and locked away. And what we do with these 2 stairs is actually we have a public or a open walkway through the building where you can have also again this informal exhibitions, which does not necessarily need to be curated, but can happen at any time and is constantly open. Because the actual glass volume is then, and the auditorium, that's lockable. But this building, in a way, is completely accessible 24/7. And so the stairs also as entrance and entrance gesture, but also seating stairs where people can mingle. And you see up there is this little tuk-tuk-like vehicle, which is part of this exhibition and this public route through the building. Again, yeah, working with a secondary skin. Envelope design is part of also our design agenda. And here is a woven material, again, to reduce the solar heat gains in the interior of the building and reduce operational energy, which you would need for air conditioning. The place in action. And yeah, based on this project, we participated in a competition which we won 2019. And now we are going into, from the build projects, the final 2 projects we are going to show is projects in the making in partly schematic, but already later design stages. And this one, the first one is Rumah Budaya Indonesia Kaya. And this is a design we actually designed or redesigned 5 times. So this is the 5th design we're going to show. And so yeah, it's not necessarily literally a house on stilts, but what we want to do is we want to integrate again a open public space which is more accessible. This building is going to happen in Jakarta, and Jakarta's reality, also due to one of the former presidents, is the reality of the shopping mall, right? And the reality of the shopping mall, of course, again, is a controlled environment, socially controlled. Daliana, for instance, you know, she spent her childhood or her youthhood in shopping malls because that was a space where you could let your kids go, which they are protected, but at the same time it's a comfortable, climatically comfortable space. So in a way, public space was taken over or was provided for in Indonesia largely through shopping mall and private entities, right? And we wanted to break away from that a little bit, so from the shopping mall typology. We had an excursion with a client that came, visited us in Singapore, where we currently are, and for instance, School of the Arts, SOTA in Singapore was a quite interesting example. Also projects, for instance, by WOHA, where you have this openness, where you have this big open lobby, and this is what we want to incorporate there, sort of having this elevated building, again, forming around a space for gathering and social interaction. So that's how we design it currently. We're working here with, of course, several entities together. This is not only SHAU, this is, for instance, also Shimizu Corporation, Sierra Landscape, Meinhardt for the facade, and MEP, and all sorts. So this is a really big design of a bigger magnitude, which we as an office yeah, like to collaborate with others with. So this slide here is also something, I mean, this is a bit more like a way to communicate with the client. So the rice field is one of these cultural landscapes as a point of reference of explaining how we want to integrate all this landscape and stack it. The central space piercing through in the lobby to a garden in the back. We explained it as a cave, as a hidden garden. Caves always have something mythical to people. Also, they draw people in. Everybody wants to, you know, explore a cave because they expect to see something unforeseen or remnants of other cultures before. So caves are attracting people. And of course, in Indonesia, with these rock formations and the tectonics, of course, there are many caves and many caves to visit. And then Pucuk Grebung. This is a bamboo-based pattern, which I will explain in short a bit more, is part of our facade design, part of our identity of the building, but it's also not only a cultural reference, but is a climatic performance facade as well. So now we want to explain also this project to a larger audience and especially to authorities in Indonesia and in Jakarta, what we are adding there, because you build this big building in a neighborhood which is maybe a little bit small scale and could be seen as problematic. But so really we cover several sustainability goals with this building. So for instance, gender equality is a big issue in Indonesia as well. But the whole organization of this theater, the client herself, part of the technical team is very much female-led, and I'm still quite sure one of the reasons why we won this competition is because we have Daliana and yeah, some form of association, of course. But clean water, so we want to have this landscape, because a lot of parks you see in Indonesia are grouped around flowers and looking nice. So we want to have this performative landscape. So we're working together with Sura landscape architects that we really can collect the rainwater. Jakarta is also sinking, has a problem of a lot of flooding during the rainy seasons. So you need to do, in order to battle that, you cannot solve it at the city scale anymore. That's the problem. So you have to solve it more and more on a building scale, that green roofs contain rainwater for a longer time and then evaporate it or give it out in small amounts and delay it into the sewage system, which is completely overburdened. Also, what you usually do not think about is decent work and economic growth, right? We were talking with our clients, so they have a whole team set up where they communicate with the neighborhood to also tell them, listen, if you have this building and if you go with us along, you will have a construction site. Sure, there will be noise for a while, but the whole neighborhood starts then having warungs, small stalls, and they then provide food for the construction workers, right? And there's a long-term development and economic benefit for the whole Pura Kampung village in the city neighborhood around. Yeah, and so on and so forth. So I'm not going now through all these points. But yeah, that's the slide from Sura Landscape Architects. So really understanding this landscape as a part of a larger ecosystem, which is also missing in our dense cities. Green helping with the urban heat island effect, the water management I was mentioning. So that it is not really a sort of a pretty garden, but really a garden which is meshed into the building and has its purpose and being really part of it and very well integrated in all its aspects with bioswales and filtering water and so on and so forth. So I walk you around the design currently. So this is the drop-off where you then walk through this security barrier, and this is again also a very big discussion, right? If you again take shopping malls, there's always this security gates. So we want to have it as open as possible, but we also realize that at the current state, how the society is at the moment in Jakarta, in Indonesia, it's not that possible. So therefore, we opted to have a glass fence, right? Which at least gives a visual transparency or a visual connectivity, but in the hope that in the future this can be disassembled and it can be completely open and completely uncontrolled. And people can just walk in and use this space also for smaller, more informal concerts and music shows. So this is part of back of the house, which is on this upper floor where you just saw the stairs. So this is a little bit divided, but then again, not like divided very, very harshly, but with a planter box in between. So on the other side, you have the guests coming, the audience coming in. So there is somewhat a connection between back of the house and the artists, which we find quite important, because this is what you always want to like to have, getting a peek into how artists are, what they're doing before they're performing. When you walk through this sort of cave, then you have this garden behind with a water feature again and installation, but then again also a auditorium where you can have small concerts, or street musicians could come and perform through the building, going up these long stairway with seating possibilities. We were thinking about maybe integrating a library space here, because there's also a music school, and then the main upper lobby, and you see already a little bit peeking through the facade, if you look through the building. And yeah, this is what I explained earlier a little bit, based on this Pucuk Rebung pattern. So we were looking into some cultural identity, which is not necessarily only representing one group or one ethnic group in Indonesia, because Indonesia is in itself a multicultural country with so many different cultures. And that came actually from the client themselves, that they suggested, can we do something with this Pucuk Rebung pattern, because it is a pattern in batik, for instance, and in other also built environment, which is found all over Indonesia. And you see on the below the golden one, I think it comes more clear when you see this sort of a V-shaped pattern, diamond pattern. It's actually a abstraction of a growing bamboo sprout. So you know bamboo sprouts with these overlapping leaves, and this is the representation. So we use this as a starting point to develop this secondary skin as a cultural reference, but B, also as a sun shading device for reducing the solar heat gain. So based on the current design, we can reduce the solar heat gain on the glass facade by 48%. But then, of course, the glass itself also has a solar heat gain coefficient, which is further reducing it. And then testing it with daylight simulation, the facade versus not the facade, if it's still sufficiently lit on the inside. Which then resulted in this layout, which is a gradual change from more closed, where, let's say, less important aspects of the lobby, like just a corridor, versus more open parts of the lobby, and also more view to interesting parts of the city. So it starts opening itself up. So the model, and also very important, is this little building on the bottom left. This is going to be the office, explain in a second. And here the sectional model. So we made this, model where you can, or the model maker made this model where you can lift these parts out and look inside. And this going to be, or this is the current state of the design for the main hall, where we bring this motif of the Pucuk Rebung back in various forms, and working together with Nagata Acoustics for all these panels, that it can function as a theater for opera, theater for musical, theater play, but in this case, this is the configuration with an acoustic shell, which can be hung in if you have pure acoustic classical concerts without the help of the speakers. Many speakers are hanging from the ceiling, but they are used more for musical than rather this performance. So there's a lot of thinking going into this, in terms of performance, as well as, again, cultural representation. And this part, that's this little box, which I mentioned earlier, and I think we are also quite proud, because they obtained the land and they needed an office for during the construction process, but then also later, once the theater building is done, for managing the whole artists and so on and so forth. There are some new spaces, there's some artist exercise spaces, practice rooms, but also that they can stay overnight. And why we are happy is they bought it and immediately wanted to tear away this building. But we went there and we had a look and said, like, you should not just tear away a building just because you don't like it. Let's first have a look and analyze it, because every building which you have is stored carbon, in a way, stored energy. And if you would just tear it away, you would need to invest again freshly, and you have to take away all the rubble. So we luckily could convince the client to keep it and renovate it. So together with the interior design firm, which we know they did the interior, and we were working on the exterior. So this is now the current state of the art. The facade on the left from the office is almost done, so we need the planters still going. And on the right side, you see that's the prototype for the one-to-one prototype for the actual facade of the building. And the next step is to have a bigger one-to-one mock-up, which is soon to be built. And yeah, with this, I give back the word to you.
So we expect a lot from that project because not often we have good collaborators, good contractors. So we we'll show you again when it happens in 2-3 years, fingers crossed. But there is then this last project that we show you. This is the most wanted project in the new capital at the moment. Indonesia's new capital, that is in Kalimantan. Long story short, there was a master plan competition to 2019. I was in the jury. A good team won it. It's a kind of forest in a city concept. This is the kind of core of the capital. And a short summary of the site is that it's not a flat site. It is kind of like a lot of hills rolling through. And it is a secondary forest. It is not a primary forest. So Indonesia does not intervene on the green heart of the world, but these are productive wood forests. So they're eucalyptus trees. They're used, the pulp is used to make paper. And so reforestation is on the way, and building it is also on the way. So let's talk about this vice presidential palace. This is our competition slides. We are also going to preview you what we are working on right now. So there is a tradition of longhouses in Kalimantan. And we think we bring it into a palace concept where the concept of the longhouse on a hill, on top of a hill, with the terracing other kind of offices rolling down the hill as part of the disguising itself into the contour as part of the nature. So Huma Betang Umay means mother longhouse. So the word mother here is also very important because ibu means mother, and Mother's Day is coming, by the way, and ibu kota means the capital. So there is something with the Indonesian word that wants to make ibu part of the new capital, but they never mention it in any of the concepts. So this would be it. So we learned from the Dayak Longhouse as a reference, but with the roof strategy, we want to make it more open form. And also we would like that to be generating solar energy, because it is really important. We should not rely on fossil fuel, and it seems like the new capital embraces the idea of sustainability, regenerative design. So it is the time when we put the solar panels on the roof. And it's also house on stilts, if you like. So we are trying here to find new typology, what is Nusantara, representative but also performative, and how it kind of like flow with the nature with a lot of reforestation. We sold this very well in the competition. It seems that the jury picked us. And we have for the architecture, passive design with energy saving, and it is important that we collaborated with Transsolar in Germany, that they designed the hybrid cooling for this. So this will be the first hybrid cooling building in Indonesia with a combination of low energy air conditioning and fan running at the same time. So this would, if successful, it would reduce half of the energy use of the building. And so on. So in the site plan wise, we want it to be circular and regenerative with a lot of reforestation and local planting, rainwater use, etc. So it is important that this is also a national identity. So it has a longhouse, but not only Kalimantan, but Indonesia identity. So the sun path we take very seriously. So instead of orienting ourselves to the national axis, we follow the sun orientation and the hill, having the most important volume on top of the hill, but it really follows the north-south orientation so that the east and west has the least exposure to sun. So the intention is through photovoltaic roof, rainforest harvesting, we can have this circularity that we intend to have as actually prescribed in the kind of new capital idea. So this is a celebration of the master plan into the architecture. So you could look at from the aerial view, the solar roof covering all the roof, and this would supply the whole energy for the building. And if there is an extra energy that can be spilled over to the other buildings. So look at this image as I'm going to go to the next slide, where we entered the next design phase right now, where some things have to change. But so there is like an iteration of the design, and of course it happens with every architect here that you design something in the competition, and then a new brief came over because now the users take part. They tell you what they would like to have and not like to have. For example, in the beginning, the idea of the longhouse is also to kind of be a village of many programs. So we included the palace, the office of the president, of the vice presidential function, as well as the residents. But they would like the residents to be not together with the office palace, and we understand that. That's the user's concern. That's why there is a new volume that we would like to put outside, and that is the residents as separated. So there are a lot of adjustments within a very, very short amount of time. So in a few minutes, I'm going to walk you through very fast on the kind of like the latest design iteration, and some of the images, even the president haven't seen them, so you'll be the first to see this most update. So this is the west entrance of the palace itself. We like it to be a lot of stairs, but there are some shaded elevators on the left and right, and it goes up, kind of celebrating the momentum each time. There is also funicular on the side for the VVIP. And here's the preview of the West Auditorium in the Palace office. We're going to the other side of the building. That's from the east view. That's the entrance for the solar cars, for the electric cars, to drop the VVIP. So the solar car will drop the passenger here, and it enters the palace with the grand stairs with a kind of like Dayak kind of inspired interior with the shields on the roof. Some kind of openness with the balcony as well. So it should not look like an office, but it should be kind of like more co-working style. And there is a balcony viewing to the south. Then you will see the botanical garden, which is in the planning as well. Another building, the residence. It's also a longhouse, smaller, but also with a very big roof, because we want to put as much solar panel as possible there. And this is the kind of in-between space where you enter, and there are a lot of waiting spaces. This is as intended as the vice presidential team came to us and told us what they really need. And we go to the secretariat offices. So we would like the kind of office workers to feel that they're working in a resort, sort of to say. So these are like terraces, a lot of balconies, this is the entrance drop-off. We advise everyone to use a bike, of course. You have to go kind of bike uphill, or otherwise you just walk and use public transport. This is the atrium. We like it to be as green, as light as possible. And there is budget for it, actually. So it's really nice. And we hope that this continues well, but there are things which are not in our hand when it comes to government project. So Secretariat Office, and also the mosque. So this is now the international preview where we show for the first time the new design. So the mosque is trying to hide under an earth and a green. So we don't want it to be taking over the iconic presence of the palace itself. So the mosque is necessary because it is very, very much used by the 90% of the population, and each complex has its own mosque. So this is important for the vice presidential palace complex to be. So some preview of the kind of relationship between the outside space and the inside space, and the orientation to Qiblat, which is to Mecca, and secondary skin. So this we are working on right now. We're in submission phase to the next tender winner, which is coming in 2 weeks. So.
Yeah, that brings us to the end. So 0.2 seconds left. Now it says time is up. Yeah, to conclude, whenever we show our projects, and we have lectured, last year in US and also in Europe, then people tell us, oh, it looks very Indonesian, or it looks very Asian. If we present it in Indonesia, we have the problem that, especially the older generation, tells us it looks way too Western and doesn't have any relationship to Indonesia and all. So we need to come up, or needed to come up with a strategy, and that's what you see here. Whatever gets thrown at us, we just say it doesn't need to look Indonesian, but it has to perform Indonesian. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Daliana Suryawinata and Florian Heinzelmann, co-founders of SHAU from Indonesia, for sharing the inspiring and interesting works with us today. The talk shows us that it's important for architecture to cater to each culture and minimize the negative impact on the environment and climate as well. We can see that sustainability is also very important even in architecture. At this moment, it will be Q&A session. Will be moderated by Dr. Randa Adundet Jarat. Please welcome Dr. Randa.
Okay, good evening, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It's my great pleasure to be here today. And welcome you all to Florian and Daliana Q&A section. Okay, we're gonna start with the first question. As a host for the event today, I have some question for you guys. Okay, how do you think, what is the most significant challenge for design community projects such as a micro library?
Should I start that? So it's an important question. In a way, it opens up the relationship between architects, stakeholders, and users. And in the case of microlibraries, they're small projects, so we thought, oh, it's easy, they're small buildings, we'll get it done. But this complexity for every project and every neighborhood we enter, it's always multiple. And there are, say, formal stakeholders and informal stakeholders. So you know who's the funder. We meet them. We sell the microlibrary to them. They would like to fund it. We come up with the city. They give the land, a good piece of land in the middle of the city, let's say. And we have now community is a tricky term because it's not one's voice. There are always at least 10 or more voices in the community because, I mean, can you agree on an organization? Let's say there are always many opinions, but the community itself, it comprises many different age groups, many different social stratas, and different kind of wants and needs. And it also sometimes includes the kind of local gangster, I would say, which is not that gangster with a kind of bang bang gun like in the South America. We don't have that, but they are kind of in a way embedded in the community. So you want to kind of talk with them. So participation is very important. Therefore, in every microlibrary project, we talk with the potential users, try to ask them what they need programmatic-wise. And then we come with several solutions that we can discuss together, sometimes also with the funders and how to bring it to the users. You want to add?
So yeah, part of the design strategy is also indeed to find the right community, and that goes beyond the usual work of an architect. So who is running and who is operating the microlibrary? We have not shown all, but I think we built 8 of them. The 9th is in the making. And depending on which entity is giving the money. So for instance, if it's the city, then it's run with a local youth organization. If it's with CSR funding, corporate social responsibility, then we can help also finding people. But this sort of different way of who is running the library also poses different challenges. Because one thing after all is, you need to have a full belly before you do voluntary work. And this is something which we underestimated, at least in the beginning, that people, first and foremost, also see it as a way of making money and their daily living because they're simply poor, right? So by giving them possibility to sell a coffee or to sell snacks, then they, can staff the library. And this sort of learning and understanding is very important, and how to incorporate that into the design and how to engage the community very early on and do our research about that.
And how do you think, what is the key and factor to design sustainability to the local community?
That's a very tricky question. You start again.
So sometimes sustainability also means economy in a way. So that's for the funder, is that everything can be done within the budget, but often we forget as architects that the operational and maintenance cost that comes afterwards, especially on the projects that we initiate ourselves, is more than actually the construction cost itself. So we learn a lot with that, and we found out that the kind of like sustainability of each microlibrary itself depends on whether the original funder want to kind of extend that to the operational phases. And some of our most successful microlibraries, such as Bima, Warakayu, they are not left out by the funder. So the funder continuously support this building till whenever. So that's like everything has a kind of time limit. Everything is temporary in this world, but how temporary is the question, right? So that's also like sustainability in terms of orienting your building, providing cross ventilation can lower the cost of the building. So that's kind of good to sell to the operational cost because you don't have much electricity. And you want to add?
Yeah. It's basically, I would say it's almost the other way around, right? We build these buildings and we know from the beginning that there is no air conditioning, right? There is no money, there is no funds to install it, and there is no money to run them, right? And also maintain them. So in order to make this building as comfortable as possible, we always deal with this passive climatic design strategies because we know it's not provided in the first place. So I think it's maybe the other way around, like not necessarily what people think about sustainability, but maybe what people think about what can we do as architects with our limited resources to make it as inhabitable and as comfortable as possible in this local Indonesian tropical climate.
Thank you so much. Is there any question from the audience?
You mentioned to do volunteer works, the belly has to be full. In your own practice, it seems that this micro library projects, right, started as social work for you. And of course now you're doing such a grand project as the Vice President Palace for the new capital city. How do you manage this sort of, kind of like commission paid work architecture and the social responsibility architecture within your companies in your firm? Is there, for example, in Thailand now there's a thing called social enterprise where you take certain percentage of your income and put onto your public work or social responsibility work. Is there such a thing in your mind that the architecture firm should be in between those sort of two worlds?
So I think we do what a lot of offices are doing is we're cross-financing projects, smaller projects with the bigger projects. And of course, we also have the bread and butter projects, which we have not maybe shown today, right? And they help then to finance other things. And what we like about these micro libraries, I mean, due to the scale, is also they are our own pet projects in a way. Not only we want to give back to society, but also we can experiment. So this is also a great learning process for us because, they are not in a way that serious in terms of budget as, let's say, a vice presidential palace or a multi-purpose theater, right? So we can try out things. And of course, if it doesn't work out, we rectify it, right? So for instance, as Daliana has shown in the beginning with Microlibrary Beamer, we only had the ice cream buckets as the facade in the beginning. And we thought like, yeah, that will work. And it didn't, right? So, so we had to install the polycarbonate to be closable. And then we had to go, of course, the extra mile to rectify what we did wrong, right? But this is the interesting thing that we can try out different materials, different approaches, different design strategies, which then can help other and larger projects as well. So in a way, it is not just us being altruistic, we also get a lot back from it. And that's not only, it's not always the question about money, but it's the question about knowledge and the question about, getting new ways of new impulses for our design practice.
So adding to that, we were at some point worried that we will be seen as like small library architects only. So luckily we have other projects too that we can grow with. And we like this diversity of scale. And since we do not have a set of our own contractor of a team to kind of specialize in one typology, and some architects are really good in doing that, we like to kind of let life bring us to whatever projects there is any possibility. And yes, a balance, as you mentioned, is important in a way that so it activates also passion in our office team. So they don't get bored doing large projects, or they don't get bored making small projects only, but in between. And sometimes we also do a kind of village improvement project, right? Because this is, it feels right doing it. It feels really good, but also it's immediately built when it's with the ministry, and then we can insert several interventions like in Yogyakarta as well as the micro library.
Also coming back to earlier parts of these questions. I'm German, then went to the Netherlands for studying, right? And when you're graduating, you're fairly old already, and then you encounter like friends from Indonesia, and they have like built already multiple private houses when they're 23 or 24, and you think, my God, I haven't built anything yet, right? So people often, or when we talk, oh, you went to Indonesia, and see this as a sort of drastic step. Actually, it isn't, right? Because on one hand, we can contribute to the development of the country, but on the other hand, Indonesia also gave, at least to me, you are Indonesian, but a lot, because a lot of opportunities are able, because in Europe, for instance, everything, also maybe in Singapore, everything is relatively rigid and divided. If you have not shown a portfolio where you have built 5 laboratory buildings, let's say in the past 5 years, you're never invited to this competition, and then you come to a place like Indonesia, and all of a sudden you get these projects on the table of immense magnitude, and that is also so very, very rewarding. So I think, to be very clear, it's just sort of a give and take, right? It's a mutual benefit, right? And this is what we like very much. There's this Chipoletta diagram. I don't know if you know it, the smart, the stupid, and the helpless, right? So we like to operate in this, if I can say, hopefully in the smart corner, right? So we generate benefits for everyone, and I think that should be the ultimate goal for any architect, generating benefits for everyone, because then this will be ultimately a better place, you know.
Is any more question from the audience?
Yes. My question is about the public library. How you ensure about the community that they want the ice cream bucket to be the facade of the building? The process to ensure that they will love this facade, you know. I'm not sure. This is have a thin line about the garbage and the building, you know. How you ensure that the community will love this facade?
That's a question we never ask ourselves, actually. It doesn't look like garbage, so that's a good thing about these white ice cream buckets. We don't ask the community everything because we are worried they will take over our design possibility, right? This is with every architecture with community. How far do you let community dictate the output? I think that's very important. So we ask them more about the programs, the usability, and we'd like to have that corner for ourselves to kind of being able to propose several design output possibilities, including the one with the ice cream bucket, which was a lucky find, by the way. So there is a story about this ice cream bucket material. Do you want to tell it, or should I?
Well, go on.
So we were in the beginning looking for waste material because garbage is an issue, especially in Indonesia. I don't know why. I don't think in Thailand it's different. I think it's mostly in Indonesia where all the best touristic spots, we always also see garbage around, which is like a pity. Why do we do that? I think in other countries, it's better handled. So it is a terrible issue, especially plastic garbage. We want to put that also as an issue, as a design issue. So we try to collect, first of all, use jerry cans. So these are like containers that you use for oil or for water. But the factory does not have it anymore, the second-hand use one. So they wanted to produce us new jerry cans, which is defying the purpose because we want to use second-hand material, not making new plastic from oil. So after a long search, our junior architect found that there are ice cream buckets for sale online. So these are the kind of reuse from the wedding activities, and some people are collected and reuse it as a container.
Yeah, they're sort of like the poor man's Tupperware in a way, because they come with a lid and you can close it and store your whatever rice and food and whatnot.
Oh, okay, back to me. So there is no issue with the community, also because the output of these ice cream buckets look like a kind of new material. So when it's clean, it looks like a white, shiny object. It doesn't have this kind of like a second use thing or a poor material thing. So they're open to that, but also especially that the structure is made of steel, and it is, well, in some cases there are other perceptions when it's made of bamboo, right? As the lecturer earlier, Marina, mentioned.
No, I think it's also to answer very shortly to your question. I think it's this found objects is quite interesting. You mentioned already that they look clean and neat, right? It was also lucky that we found these buckets, because the jerry cans, we wanted to cut it open. And because the material is relatively thin, they would have become very, very flimsy and wobbly, right? But the nice thing about these ice cream buckets is they're roughly 1 millimeter thick, and because the lid is bent around, and even if you punch out the bottom, right, they stay relatively stable. So it was really, in that sense, it was really a lucky find. And I think if you look around, either it's Arch Daily or Architizer, there is, a category which they put up a while ago about reuse material, right? And there's, for instance, one pavilion, one building where they have old chairs, which looks a little bit like Eames plastic chairs in the facade and stuff like this, or crates as an envelope type. So I think the key point is really probably, to have a material which you use in an unforeseen way, where you do not recognize this material immediately, right? Or it looks good and polished enough. And what we found out later is everybody loves, of course, the story. So the Ember ice cream, the ice cream bucket, right? It's a fantastic story because everybody can relate to that. So they really love it. So it's much better than the cherry can, the oil canister, right? So yeah, sometimes you just have to wait till opportunity in life presents you with a viable solution, right? And that, a lot of good coincidences came together.
Yeah, you're right. I forgot about the kind of perception of ice cream, right? Nobody hates ice cream. And when the word ice cream is inserted in a kind of object, it's like, it becomes good, it's positive. It's like, what is that? I'd like to go there and see it. So it's like positive.
And it makes a fantastic story, right? Because we got a lot of also articles, and this is something which we try to replicate later, with the storytelling of the Varak Nengdok, right? That we can have this scale, at least as a sort of a narrative thing. Maybe it's not something immediately recognizable, but if you have then local newspapers writing, hey, there is this library which is done with, I think, 1,000, roughly almost 2,000 ice cream buckets. This is news, and this is like, oh, we want to see it. So it attracts a lot of people. And with this attraction, and with it being then in the news, right, in the newspaper, it shines a positive light on the CSR. CSR, yeah, correct. At the funding partners, right, and in the city who gave the land, meaning because of these positive stories, you're more likely again to attract new people or new people who want to give money for the next one, right? So this is, you can use it also as a design device for, generating funds even, if you want to say so.
Thank you so much. From your project, how do you think the most difficult part to define the tropical climate to human interaction? How do you think like the most difficult part design for the tropical climate? Yeah.
Water, rainwater, stormwater. I mean, if you come from Germany, yeah, sure, it rains, but I mean, the amount of water which comes down in a tropical region in a very short amount of time is crazy, and you underestimate that. And as soon as it's wet, then there is no human interaction anymore. So this is something you need to take care of.
But we often forget how bad the rain can be, and the wind can bring it to kind of enter the building in kind of like 180 degree, which is crazy, unthinkable, but it happens. So for example, in our Warakayu micro library, we already have this thick wood waffle facade, but it's still not enough to kind of like, when the rain is really, really bad. So we inserted a curtain. And the curtain is a hospital grade kind of blood splatter proof, and therefore also waterproof. But then when it acts like a sail, the whole thing kind of blows, right? So actually we learned a few months ago that we need to insert small holes, as if you're like having an advertisement kind of panel, you need some holes in it. So we have to.
The wind pressure is not too high.
That the wind pressure is reduced, and then it helps.
Yeah, I mean, we also designed the roof overhang with a certain formula, which I cannot repeat right now. We have it in some other slides. How much is the wind speed and how much it would drag in the rain, right? And even if you calculate this with the roof overhang, it's still not enough. So you always have to have a plan B in that sense. So yeah, the cross ventilation is great. In the tropical climate, you want to have the breeze, you want to have the cross ventilation. In sort of the northern climate, nobody wants to have the draft, right? Because the draft is how the warmth gets dragged out of your house. So if you are living in the Netherlands in a house from 1920, like we did, right? So you have these old windows which you can up and down, and they're not closing tightly, and then always some draft comes in from somewhere, and you're freezing sort of here. So the draft is absolutely good. Sun shading needs to be provided, but you know the trickiest indeed is, I would say, rainwater, because rainwater is then, if you have a very open building, you need to enclose it for that very moment, and how do you make that happen without you know, compromising the design idea too much?
And of course the air conditioning, because the psychrometric chart has this certain comfort zone, and this week and last week, I mean, Thailand, Singapore, Indonesia, it's really hot, right, these days. And we can't rely on natural ventilation anymore at some point. But the architecture with and without air conditioning look completely different. And of course, as architects, we want as much open as possible, let the rain come and be fully without air conditioning. But at some point, we need to accommodate that as well. I mean, we won't be here with many people today if we would be sitting outside at this heat, right? We do need the air conditioning. So in a way, there is a challenge of how far architecture can tackle microclimate. And luckily, there is a sort of new solution such as hybrid cooling, which you can let the AC flow out with the help of the fan, and it's also half of the energy used. So these kind of things will be the discussion, I think, on the next, what do you call it, practice on tropical architecture.
Okay, thank you so much. Any question from the audience? Okay.
How long did it take the residents to realize that the facade were actually plastic ice cream buckets?
Sorry, what was the question?
Neil, how long did it take for the local communities to realize, the local residents to realize that it was plastic ice cream buckets?
Oh no, they realize it pretty fast, because I mean they're always, you know, walking around through the construction site, and if something goes up and they know there's a library, I mean they're always coming and inspecting the whole thing. And what we tried to do actually was, you know, with the binary code, right? The idea of the binary code in the beginning was also a little bit, if you're illiterate, right, and you take a book, you understand there is information, and you see there's some symbols, and you understand there is maybe some logic to it. You cannot decipher it because you don't know it, because you cannot read, right? And one of these ideas with the binary code was nobody of us is able to read binary code. So you see this pattern of zeros and ones, which in a way look random, but also appear somehow, you know, there's some repetition in it, there's some logic behind, you just cannot grasp it. So we thought actually, when we then asked Ridwan Kamil, who was, before he was governor, he was mayor, what is the message? And he said like, Bukula adalah jendela dunya, books are the window to the world, and we inscribed that. So we thought actually we can do a competition at the opening where he was also present, and give out a prize to the person who is first able to decipher what is written in the facade. Unfortunately, I don't know, somebody spilled the beans earlier, and so everybody, it did not happen, so everybody knew about it. So yeah, this ice cream buckets was actually, yeah, and the message was known before we know that everybody else knew, you know.
But it seems like there is a trend, right, that recycling is good. And also in the communities of scarcity, they do that every day on a daily basis. You don't buy new things unless you really need to. And indeed, this what Florian mentioned as the ice cream bucket as poor man's Tupperware, they use it. So it's probably, maybe one household has one of these poor man's Tupperware, and they're kind of familiar with it. And therefore, they don't see it as garbage, but something they're using as well. So maybe that's a kind of additional positive perception.
Probably the better question would be, you know, how much did we ruin the market for these buckets because of reproducing scarcity, and all of a sudden they skyrocketed in the price, you know?
We can check that.
No one stole the buckets, right?
Yes, check.
Hello. Perhaps I can drag you out from the tectonic questions. This one is going to be social questions. I was checking the presidential palace in Google right now, like how it developed from what I used to see on YouTube, I think 2 years ago, I think, when it's announced. And perhaps people in this room didn't know about the eagle things, right? And after listening to your presentations, I mean, people in, I don't know how, my question would be, how people will perceive that, but because your project was like so elaborate, like try to solve a lot of tropical, sustainable, contextual problems. But if you look at the presidential architecture, the buildings, it's gone totally on the opposite directions, like curtain wall building, huge mega structures. Like, what do you see? Like, how people will perceive the difference?
So, following social media and the whole discussion, right? So it is. Yeah, depends on whom you're asking. It is very critically seen, at least in the more intellectual part of Indonesia.
These two buildings are like quite close to each other.
No, there's an axis. I don't know how much, but a couple of kilometers from each other.
More. So let's say that in the new capital there is an axis, and then the axis is defined by the presidential palace and the religious complex. So the kind of the vice presidential palace is icon of the west neighborhood, they call it, but it's not on the axis, so it's like slightly off. So it's kind of like more free in a way of representation of how it should look like a logo of our national bird or not. There are mixed perceptions on that, and architects completely do not see it as architecture. General public, it's difficult, because it's always we can't satisfy everybody, but as well as some people are actually happy about it, right? So it's difficult. So Indonesia is a democratic country in a way. This is how democratic planning is. Sometimes there are option A, option B, option C celebrated all together. This is the difficulty about a consistent master planning in Indonesia. You can't do that unless you're an authoritarian state. Like, I don't know, I don't want to say it. You can't do this consistently. So when there is opportunity to do architecture, we try it, we join the competition, we won it, we try to follow it up with blood and tears. But sometimes some of the opportunities are gone and taken, and you can't do anything about it because it's already out.
Yeah.
We can continue over dinner. This is a long discussion.
Okay, last but not least, I would like to say thank you to Florian, Daliana for a really wonderful and amazing presentation today. And also, I would like to say everyone to joining us today. Thank you so much and ขอบคุณค่ะ
Thank you very much to our speakers, Daliana Suryawinata and Florian Heinzelmann, as well as our moderator, Dr. Randa Adundet Jarat, for the Q&A section. It's very beneficial for all of us here to discuss in detail with our speakers. On this occasion, I would like to invite Ms. Kuntida Songkitipakdi, Chairman of ASA Expo 2024, to give a souvenir to our honored speaker. Please welcome Ms. Kuntida. Special souvenir from ASA. And please, our moderator, join us for the group photo section. Also, would like to invite our chairman of ASA Expo 2024 on the stage. And this is the last session already. Please give a big round of applause to our honored speaker one more time. Thank you very much. All right, we come to The end of the day of ASA International Forum 2024 is just day one. We still have tomorrow. Today we have learned a lot from our three speakers, three sections. From Marina Tabrasam, Ongtuan Chaya, Daliana Suryawinata, and Florian Heinzelmann. We learned that architecture is very important to concern about context, cultures, history, even the sustainability. And for tomorrow, we have three sessions waiting for you all. Feature Eric LaRousse, Dean, Chair, Associate Professor of the National University of Singapore. Ton Khao Panin, Founding Principal of Research Studio Panin from Thailand. And Ma Yen Song, Founder and Principal Partner of Mad Architects. For today, we would like to say thank you very much all for joining. Thank you very much to all other guests. We hope the session today will inspire you all and be beneficial for you all for today. Hope to see you all tomorrow for the ASA International Forum Day 2. Have a safe trip back home and see you soon tomorrow. Thank you very much. ขอบคุณค่ะ